Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Legal Wills webinar. Um, my name is Tim Hewson, and I am one of the co-founders, and I am the CEO of Legal Wills, a company that started 25 years ago after it became apparent to myself and my co-founder that we and none of our friends were getting our wills and other important estate planning documents written. And we tried to identify what the barriers were, why people weren't getting it done. And we knew that it was perhaps a cost issue, perhaps a time issue. It was never getting to the top of the to-do list. So back then in 2000, Henry and myself set about trying to remove the barriers to preparing a will. It's been quite a journey over the years now, 25 years. We've done many wills. We've helped people prepare about 500,000 wills over the years. We are in Canada, the US, the UK, and also in South Africa now as well. And in Canada, we are in every province, every territory, and bilingual in every province and every territory. So before we get started, today is going to be a little bit different. Usually I just open the floor to questions, and I will still be doing that. So absolutely, if you have any questions, I'm going to be answering those questions. I have the chat screen at the side there. So if you do have any questions as we go along, by all means, you can fire those into the chat and I will address them. But the reason it's going to be a little bit different today is what we thought we'd do is rather than just answer questions about estate planning documents, I'm actually going to go through our service. The webinar is typically about half an hour. I think I can prepare a fully legal document. I can prepare a completed will using our service within half an hour. And what I will end up with at the end of that is a document that would then be downloaded and printed and then signed in the presence of two witnesses in most jurisdictions. In some jurisdictions, like in Canada, in BC, in about 11 US states, you can electronically sign the document and electronically store it online. We do offer that option through all of our websites. I won't be doing that today. Because that's kind of a different demo. But what I will be doing today is certainly stepping through the service. So you're going to see all of the different steps, the information that you would have to enter into the service to prepare the will. And as we go through it, I will absolutely, if you have any questions in the chat, please ask them. If they're specific to a particular page, then I can certainly answer those questions. As always, there's a disclaimer here. I am not an estate planning attorney. I cannot give anybody legal advice. I cannot enter into a client-attorney relationship. I cannot portray myself as a lawyer who's giving legal advice. I cannot even give financial tax advice. I'm not a registered, certified financial planner either. So those are kind of questions are absolutely best left to the professionals, but I can certainly answer questions about the service and about the documents or general questions. I would draw the line at a question that would probably be available on the internet somewhere. If you look for it, I would be able to answer questions like that, but I wouldn't be able to answer questions specific to any individual's personal situation. So thank you for the people who have joined the chat and said hi. So hello. And we're straight in there with a question. Boom. What I'm going to do, I will get to that question that's come into the chat, but I'm going to start by just logging in to an account. So I've set up an account, but that's all I've done. I've not put any information into this account because I didn't want to go through the process of actually setting up the account. You would do that if you came to our website. You would put in name and address, create a user ID and a password for yourself, and then the account would be ready to go. I did that. But what you do, it's important to show these steps. The first time you log in to your account, you will see a terms of use agreement, and there's a requirement to accept this terms of use agreement. And some people might, it's a legal document, this terms of use agreement, so you may have some questions about it. I would say that this is a quite benign agreement. There's no gotchas in here. Any piece of software that you use or any app that you use is typically going to have a terms of use agreement. Ours does. And the key points in here, and some things that people get worried about, are things like we can, actually, I'm just going to change the ratios here so you can see it a little bit better. There we go. So there are clauses in here that say things like, we could close your account down if we felt it was necessary. And people will say, well, that's not fair. Why would you close my account down? We wouldn't. We wouldn't do that. We would only do that if you were up to no good with our service. So, there are occasional, very occasional situations where we could suspend an account. It's not going to affect nearly everybody. It's going to affect like one or two. I think we might have done it like once in 25 years. So, but they're the kind of things that have to go into a terms of use agreement just to allow us to be able to do that. There is also there's a couple of clauses in here that do say that we are not a law firm. You are creating your documents, but we are giving you the tools to prepare your own documents. That's what we're doing. And I think it has to be made clear that we are not going to be writing your will if you use our service. We're going to be asking you a series of questions, and we will compile the document at the end based on the answers to those questions. But that document is your responsibility. You have to read the document and make sure that it truly reflects your wishes. And then there are certain steps that you have to do that we can't control. You have to then go and sign that document, and then sign it in the presence of any two adult witnesses who are not beneficiaries nor married to a beneficiary in the will. They can have no vested interest in the document. So if you sign it and those two witnesses sign it, you've met the requirements for preparing a legal will in almost all jurisdictions. So there are a couple of questions that have come in, and I'm actually prepared to tackle those now. One of them is it also possible to set up a trust in our service? So a trust is such a generic term that can mean so many different things. And fundamentally, it means that somebody owns the asset, but somebody else is going to be looking after it on their behalf. So there are a number of different trusts that can be created. We do certainly trusts for young beneficiaries. So you can't leave $500,000 to a 5-year-old. Within our service, you can set up a trust so that somebody can manage that inheritance for the 5-year-old. We also do what's called a lifetime interest trust. So if your spouse is not the biological parent of your children, you may want to leave your house so that your spouse can use it for the rest of their life, but on their passing, it then goes to their children. So these two types of trusts are what are called testamentary trusts. They're written into the will, and absolutely, we do support those. But there are some trusts that we don't do. We don't do, in the US, a revocable living trust. We don't support that. We recommend that you get legal advice in preparing that. A family trust, we don't do that. A Hewson trust in Canada for leaving assets to a child with special needs. We don't do that either. So there are some that we do and some that we don't. With that, I'm going to go into our service. So you go to your member homepage. When on your member homepage, if we come back here, you're going to see all of the different services that are all laid out here. And you see here that there is the will, the power of attorney, the living will. I'm seeing if I can, if you just excuse me 1 second, I'm just going to try to move this over so you're not looking in my ear when I'm working through this. Will, power of attorney, living will, expat will, my funeral, my messages, my life locker, my vault. I don't have time to go through all of these, but our services page does describe what each of these services does. I'm I'm going to go into, I just want to firstly point out that on all of our pages, we do have a live chat that is available that can answer any questions. This is a trained live chat that's been trained on all of our support tickets. It's not just ChatGPT. It will, quite frankly, amaze you. It will be able to answer questions about specific pages and sections within the service. One other thing I just want to point out as well is that our service is fully bilingual. I can just flip from English to French. Everything's going to flip over, and that includes the final documents and all the help text within the service. So I just wanted to point those two things out because they appear here. I will be doing this presentation in English. I want to also draw your attention to this at the bottom. Two-factor authentication is not currently enabled on this account. We recommend that it's turned on. There is a link to do that so that every time you log into your account, you'll get a little 6-digit code sent to your cell phone, and you put that code in to provide some extra security around your account. With that, I'm going to go into the will service for Brian Green. For the purposes of this demo, I am Brian Green, and there are a number of options here, but what I'm going to be doing is going in and clicking to create or modify the will. I'm actually going to move that there. How can I put in the amount I want into a trust for a minor? Well, we will get to that. If you look here, Section 8, Trusts for Young Beneficiaries, we will be getting to that. In Ontario, I'm going to put this question up because it's such a good question. In Ontario, who is capable of doing a competency assessment? I am power of attorney for a 90-year-old aunt who wants to make some changes to her current will, trying to care for future responsibilities. So there are rules around a capacity assessment. In Ontario, there is actually also a profession called a qualified professional capacity assessor. There is a website that you can go to that is capacity something. And if somebody knows what this website is, please put it in the chat, that you can actually hire somebody to come to your home and do a capacity assessment. So capacity, and if somebody on our team can put it in the chat, I would appreciate it. And then I can share that website for you. But there is a website you can go to where you can actually find a qualified capacity assessor to do that assessment for you. So we're going into the personal details. I'm going in here to show you that in order to prepare the will, it doesn't actually need a full address. Your address may change, but it certainly does need your city and your province. I put Ottawa, Ontario. That's where I'm living. And this is going to determine the jurisdiction for which the final document is created. So for the purposes of this demo, I will be creating an Ontario legal will. I will also draw your attention to a couple of things here. One is the pop-up help. This is available on most pages. This isn't such a great page, there's only one, but let's go to the next page. Here, I can float over any of these to tell me exactly what is required in each of these fields. And on the left-hand side, you're going to see some frequently asked questions. So marital status is like, well, is separated, common law. There's some questions that could be asked around the marital status. And these are our most frequently asked questions. What do you mean exactly by children? Is that adopted children, stepchildren? What exactly is that? So it will answer all of those questions. And for the purposes of this demo, I would encourage you to go to the service and actually step through it. You can actually do all of this without paying anything, just to try it out. I'm going to, for the purposes of this, say that I'm married and I will have children, because that's going to open up a number of new pages into the service simply because I have children. And legal guardianship comes up when, for example, there is a grandparent who has taken custody of a minor because their biological parent isn't available for whatever reason, or not regarded as competent to look after their child. So you as a grandparent may have legal guardianship for that child. So that would also that can be added here as well. So it doesn't have to necessarily be your child, but you might have guardianship over a child. My spouse, I'm going to put Helen Green. And Helen is my wife. Putting that in there. You know what? We do have questions about this. The female, she, her. This is not ideological. This is just so that we can structure the clauses properly, leaving it to her. So, like the document is signed in his presence, things like that. We need to use that pronoun when we're stepping through the service and creating the final document. So some people feel great about this, some people don't. I'm not making a political statement, but this is not an ideological option. I'll just make that clear. I am going to create a child here, Jimmy Green, and I'm going to make Jimmy a minor. Now, this is actually going to check because a minor is different in every jurisdiction. It's usually 18 or 19. There may be some 21s, there might be some 16s, but for the purposes of this, I'm in Ontario. At minor is 19, I believe. So I've made them safely under the age of majority. The reason I've done that is because it's going to ask me specific questions on what I need to do to take care of Jimmy. What you'll also see on the right-hand side here is my will is going to start to develop before my eyes as I step through the service as well. And that's very helpful for when I get into the distribution plan of my estate, where I talk about what I want to happen, but if that happens, then I want this to happen instead. It's like the contingency plans and the different permutations of who might die before me. And when we get into that, it's actually quite helpful to see it all laid out on the right-hand side, and you can read exactly what's going to happen under different scenarios. The deceased family members can be useful if it's there to acknowledge that, for example, a child did exist. They are no longer here, but I'm going to acknowledge that I do have a child. And this could potentially change the distribution plan to the grandchildren. So we put that in there as well. I have the option to add some other beneficiaries at this point, but I'm not going to here. You can add them later as well. So immediately, the first thing that's going to come up is to say, well, Jimmy was a 5-year-old. You're going to have to identify guardians for minor children. It's very important that you do name a guardian for each of your minor children, because this person will be responsible for the care of your child if there are no parents available. So important point here is that you don't put your spouse as your child. No, you could put your spouse. You wouldn't put the other biological parent of the child in here. The biological parents are always, by default, if they are capable and they are willing, they will always have care of their child. You can express your wishes for who you would want to be caring for your child. That is what this page does. It is not a legal contract that this person is going to be the guardian. What happens in reality is that if there were no biological parents available, then the courts will have to appoint somebody as the guardian. And the courts won't have anything to go on. They won't know who all of these people are. A judge in a courtroom, they may be able to look at income levels or their relationship or where they live, things like that, but they won't really know who is ultimately who your choice would be. And this is what you're able to do here. You're able to say, you know what? I think my sister thinks it's going to be her, but I don't want it to be my sister. I actually want it to be Susan Brown. And the reason is that my children love her. You can put in that. And if Susan, for whatever reason, isn't available, then it's going to be Jackie White. So this allows, in a courtroom, that a judge will be able to say, I don't know who any of your people are. Is there any indication in the will? Is there any direction? Yes, actually there is. Susan Brown was the first choice. And judge would say, well, all other things being equal, I am going to appoint Susan Brown as the legal guardian for that child. So then we are going to get into the executive appointment. So we're going to do two appointments. We're going to do the guardian appointment and the executive appointment. And beyond the distribution of your assets, that's what people think about when they're writing their will. But beyond that, these two appointments are the key reasons for preparing a will. Your guardian, obviously, is extremely important, and there's a lot of emotion attached to that appointment too. A lot of people actually step through our service and stop at that appointment because they have to think hard and talk to some people, and it's a difficult one. The executor is also a very important appointment because this is the person who you are giving the responsibility to carry out your instructions in the will. And beyond that, gather up all of your assets, secure those assets, communicate with the beneficiaries, work with CRA to do, or wherever you are, whichever country you're in the Majesty Customs and Excise, whatever the IRS, work with the government tax departments to file your tax returns. They have a lot of responsibility. And I think it's a combination of both soft skills in working with the beneficiaries, organizational skills in creating all that paperwork, and quite frankly, stamina. That person has to be able to work through what can sometimes be a long process. In here, by default, we allow you to select your spouse. There's pros and cons to that. The pro is that oftentimes the spouse is going to be the main beneficiary. So the executor moving everything over to their own name is one less person involved, and it can be quite a straightforward process, particularly if there are a lot of joint assets. It really lends itself to naming the joint account holder as the executor. That's a great idea. The cons are, if you die when you're 95 and your spouse is 95, they're probably not going to be equipped to do it. If you die when you're 32 and your spouse is 32, they may be traumatized and grieving. So sometimes it really works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a personal appointment. So we default it to the spouse. You can, of course, name somebody else. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to name my spouse. And I can name a backup. I can name up to 3 backups. So I can say no, alternates. I don't want to have a backup. I'm going to list some replacements. I'm going to do Sandra Silva. She is my cousin, and she lives at 123 Main Street, Toronto. There was always a danger of you all watching me type and it becoming painful. So now I've named an executor and a backup executor. And you can see here on the right-hand side that a lot of this information is now filling out inside of the preview of my will. Now we're getting into the distribution of the possessions. So already we're at section 7 of 13. We're cranking through. I think I'm going to go to 140 today. This will be recorded if you have to go somewhere. You can always watch it at a later date. But I'm now going to go into the distribution of the possession. So we start by asking if you've ever thought of including charities in your will. And we do this for a very specific reason. It turns out that by simply prompting people and asking them about charities. It actually increases their likelihood to leave a charitable bequest, like I think five times, and the average charitable bequest is also doubled. It's actually just by asking them, it really does increase the level of charitable giving to an extent that since we've added this page into our service, we have facilitated nearly $500 million in planned bequests in people's wills that have been created through our service. So it's been a good addition to our service, and it's also part of, I think, the LegalWills legacy, to know that there was a lot of planned bequests happening that potentially wouldn't have otherwise happened. So somebody has made the comment, I'm just going to throw this in here. I'll say this. I am the executor for 4 wills coming up for 4 family members who are all over 90. So I'm going to actually, this is a good point. So I don't know what John's background is, qualifications and things like that, and I'm sure he's super organized. There's a reason why 4 people have given him this role and responsibility. He's obviously confident and competent. But I would say, if you have been appointed an executor, you can hire professional help as and when you need it. And that is usually written into the will. So, for example, if you need an accountant to work with you, even if you need a lawyer to do some of the work, you can absolutely do that and hire them, and it's paid for out of the estate. You don't have to do everything yourself. So we do care of a pet. You can absolutely do this. I'm going to quickly add my Labrador. And a Labrador is going to live usually 15 years. I don't know exactly when they were born, because I got them from the pound, but they were born in around 2022. So that means they're 3 years old now. They probably got about 12 years to live. The Guardian, I'm going to give them $1,500 a year. Sounds about right. And I'm going to give this to Steve Gold. I'm not going to name a backup. Steve's the only one who's interested. What's that going to do for this pet trust is it's going to give a calculation. And it's going to say, if I die now, we've got about 12 years left in this Labrador's life, $1,500 a year, $18,000 is going to go to Steve on the condition that he does actually care for Fido. Now we're going to get into the distribution of the possession. So we've got to get through this demo. There's a lot I can do. I can leave everything to my spouse, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a specific item to somebody and then leave everything to my spouse. And the reason I'm going to do that is because my grand piano, my spouse doesn't play the piano. I want to leave this to, actually, I'm going to create a new beneficiary here of, I'm running out of names, Carol Brown. And Carol is my niece, and she is an aspiring musician, so Avenue, and she lives in Ottawa. Okay, so I am now going to, let's put that grand piano in there, and I'm going to leave that to Carol Brown at that request. I'm just going to do that one, and now everything else is going to go to my spouse. And the font's probably quite small here, but I've got the gift for the care of the animal. I've now created a grand piano with everything else going to my spouse. And you have identified your wife to receive all of your possessions with the exception of that piano that you just described. Now I'm going to name a backup. Well, what happens if I'm in an accident at the same time as Helen? Forgot the name of my spouse for a second. So if I'm in an accident at the same time as Helen, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to leave everything to my son. Everything's going to go to Jimmy. if something happened to both of us, myself and Jimmy, then what I'm going to do is leave everything to the United Church of Canada. First charity that came to mind. I'm not shilling for them. Just, you can choose whatever you want to do as your backup. So, have you included your family? Well, yes, I have. But it will give you this warning, like, no, but I know what I was doing, or really, I haven't included my family. Let me go back and check that. I thought I had. Now we're going to get into trust for young beneficiaries. Well, Jimmy, remember, he was only 5, so I'm going to want to create a trust for him. If I didn't create a trust for Jimmy, he's going to receive everything on his 19th birthday. And if we're involved in an accident at the same time, don't forget the guardian's taking care of Jimmy, and myself and my spouse, we've died in a car accident. When he turns 19, he's getting my entire estate. Everything I own is going to go to him. So I don't think I want him to get everything at 19. In fact, what I want to do is I want him to at least go to college, perhaps, or at least get settled down. 28 might be a little bit late, but what I'll do is I'll say he can have a third of it when he turns 21, and then half of the remainder, perhaps when he turns 25, and then he'll receive the balance when he turns 28. I feel a lot more comfortable with that. Bearing in mind that my trustee is going to be managing that for them during their lifetime. And that means that they can receive parts of it if there's education needs, medical needs, even living expenses. The trustee can give money and work with the guardian to make sure their needs are met as they're growing up and before that trust is paid out to them. But what it does mean is somebody's controlling it all the time that they are a young child. This one's an interesting one, forgiving debts. And this is because your executor has a responsibility to gather up all of your assets. And one of those assets includes, one class of assets includes debts that are owed to you. And oftentimes those debts that are owed to you might be for your adult children. You might have helped them with a down payment on a house or something like that. And you could say, you know what? Don't worry about it. I'm going to forgive that debt. And I would say, yeah, the loan that I gave my adult child, Sandra, in 2008, I'm going to forgive that debt. You don't have to work to get that back. I can adjust for it in the distribution of my estate, but you're saving the executor saying to Sandra, okay, you've got to pay $120,000. With that, I'm going to say no debts to be collected. There are some optional clauses within our service. Things like digital assets, RESPs, and no contest provision. You can include all of these in your will if you want to, but you don't have to. You can remove those. And there's an explanation about what these are. And remember, on the left-hand side, there's help text along the way. And then one of the last sections is whether you want to add an attachment to your will. And oftentimes this is not part of the will. This is a letter of wishes or some additional information that you might want to give your executor. This could be something like, I've given half of my assets each to my 2 adult children. Here's some guidance for how you're going to do that, particularly around my personal effects. I know that one child loves the paintings. I know that another child, and I think that painting's probably the equivalent of my Ming vase. You can provide some guidance for your executor to help them figure out how they're going to do their work. So that's the kind of attachment that you would then handwrite. It's not a legal document. It's just a piece of information and some guidance that might help your executor to do their work. So I'm going to attach an instruction. And what that does then is puts a clause into the will to say there is an attachment to this will, which is providing you with some more information. So I'm now done. I've now created that will. It does allow me and prompt me to very quickly prepare a power of attorney and very quickly prepare a living will. Because what it does is if you've appointed your spouse as your executor, there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to name that person as your financial power of attorney as well. So we put in some default options within the other documents to speed that process along. You can, of course, choose somebody else, but for a lot of people, that makes sense to name the executor as their financial power of attorney. And also for the healthcare, the living will, remember, is somebody to make medical decisions on your behalf if you were ever incapacitated. That may well be the same person as your executor, particularly if your executor is a friend or family member or a loved one. They're likely to also be your medical decision maker too. And with that, we prompt you, we show you some other services that we do offer. LifeLocker is really important. It's where you can go in and keep an inventory of all of your assets, and that serves as a real help to your executor, and you can set them up as a key holder to view that after you've died. But I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are some other services that make the process a lot easier for your executor, including simply notifying your executor. You can send them an email, even with it comes with a document that gives them a timeline of all of their responsibilities as well. We do offer that to just make the executor job more manageable. I am now going to finish this off with downloading and printing my final document. So this allows me to download and print. It is now generating the document based on that information that I've entered. An important point to note here is that your will does not exist as a plain text document on our servers. It only exists when you click that generate my document. So some people question or have questions about the security. Oh, is everyone going to be able to see my will? No, we don't store wills in plain text on our server anywhere. So I think I am now hopefully sharing this, but it doesn't look as if I am. I want to just bear with me. And maybe what I'm going to do is actually just download it. This is the grand finale, so I can't not do this. Perhaps might have helped if I'd practiced it a little bit, but I'm very close to being there because I do want to quickly run through exactly what the will does and shows. I think this is a streaming issue. If there are any questions in the meantime, while I'm bringing that up, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. And hopefully, I don't have an answer for you yet about the capacity assessment website. But if you want to email me afterwards, I'm more than happy to do that. And I'll put my contact information up on the screen. And screen sharing is not working. And with that, if anybody wants to, what I will do is when we put this together for viewing afterwards, I will put up the final document. We'll edit it and stitch it together. I can see the final document, but nobody else can. And the screen sharing option is not working for me. So I apologize for that. But with that, if there are, let me just go into the chat, see there are no further questions. So with that, hopefully that was a useful run through of the service. There is okay, I'm going to put this up there. It's what we have for a list of capacity assessors. So Ontario.ca has a list of capacity assessors that you can go to. There is I think it's called Ontario Capacity or something. There is another website that specifically does this as well. But thank you, Darcy, for throwing this up. There's a question: is there a spelling option on the process? Not quite sure what that means. Do we spell check? Your browser does spell check. So if that's what you mean. But yeah, but there's no, we don't have a built-in spell checker, but your browser would do that spell checking. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Sorry about the hiccup at the end. I'll be doing another webinar in a couple of weeks. And again, if you want to be in touch, tim@legalwills.ca. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And thank you so much for attending. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you. Bye. I wanted to finish this video by going through the final last will and testament that was created during the webinar. So you can see the structure of the document and how the information that I entered into the service has been represented in the final document. So this is a final will that is produced using the LegalWills service. And as you can see, it starts off with the opening phrase to say it's my will. I'm revoking, cancelling all previous wills or anything else that I've written. I'm naming my executor, which is my wife, with a backup of my cousin. And then we get into the distribution of the assets. So the first thing that happens within a will, how it's distributed, is that debts, taxes, and funeral expenses are all paid out first. And after the debts, taxes, and funeral expenses are paid out, then it goes to the specific items. So in this example, I've left my grand piano to my niece. And then after that, we're going to talk about the gift that I set up as a pet trust for the care of my dog, Fido, my Labrador, and that Steve will be receiving that on condition that he cares for the dog for the rest of its life. And then after that, we get into everything else. So it's not the specific bequests. This is everything that remains, which is everything that I own at the time that I die. So it's important to realize that I'm not listing all of my assets in my will because my assets will change over time. This is everything that I own at the time of my death is going to go to my spouse. And then if my spouse doesn't survive me, then it's all going to go to my son, Jimmy. And if Jimmy doesn't survive me either, there's a catastrophic accident, then everything's going to go to charity. So there are different clauses within this. It's quite an extensive document. It usually runs about 5 or 6 pages. The trust is set up here for Jimmy, so he's not going to receive everything on his 18th birthday. And then there's a number of clauses there that give my executor power to do what they need to do, or indeed hire professional assistance if they need it. There's also the guardianship clause. This is the person who's going to be looking after my minor child if both biological parents are unavailable. And at the end, I sign that and the witnesses sign it. And once it's signed and the witnesses sign, it then becomes a fully legal document. It's worth noting with Legal Wills, we do provide you an overview of the document. We explain the signing instructions, how to sign it. If you need an affidavit, how you can go around, get an affidavit commissioned by a notary is an option as well. And then there's some other services that we draw your attention to as well. It also talks about if you're updating your will, it's worth keeping this up in mind. You never handwrite on your document. You will always prepare a new document that will cancel any previous document. And then anytime a change is made, you need to sign that new one in the presence of 2 witnesses as well. there you have it. There's an overview of our final document, and hopefully this overview and the webinar was a good overview of how you can prepare your will. Thank you.